I spent 40 years negotiating billion-dollar contracts for downtown skyscrapers. I know what a force majeure clause is. I know that steel beams don't get paid for via Bitcoin. And I know that legitimate engineers don't ask their girlfriends to pay for cranes. So when Marco Moretti, a charming Italian civil engineer building a children's hospital in Istanbul, told me his accounts were frozen by a political coup, I didn't reach for my checkbook. I reached for my red pen. He sent me a contract. He wanted $85,000 to release a shipment of surgical steel. He told me lives were at stake. He played on my sympathy, knowing I had lost a grandchild years ago. It was a cruel, targeted attack. But he made one fatal mistake. He sent a forged legal document to a woman who helped write the international compliance laws he was breaking. He wanted a wire transfer. I gave him a lawsuit. Thank you for being here. I truly believe this story will help you, or help you save someone else, by recognizing the signs of a scammer. These are things we all need to know. So, this is the perfect moment. Hit the like button and subscribe. You guarantee you won't miss any of the upcoming stories without having to search for them. Now, back to it. I retired from the firm 2 years ago. My partners threw me a party at the Ritz. They gave me a gold watch and joked that the city of Chicago would fall down without my oversight. But the truth was, I was tired. And lonely. My husband, Robert, had been gone for a decade. The silence in my Lakeshore Drive apartment was heavier than any briefcase I ever carried. I joined Elite Singles. I wanted an equal. Someone who understood the pressure of a high-stakes career. I matched with Marco. Profile, name, Marco Moretti, age, 58, occupation, civil engineer/project manager, location, Istanbul, Turkey, contract, /Milan, Italy, home, status. Widowed. His photos were sophisticated. Marco in a hard hat, pointing at a steel skeleton of a building. Marco in a tuxedo at a gala. Marco holding a blueprint, looking intense. His bio read, Building the Future. Currently constructing a pediatric oncology center in Istanbul. Looking for a woman who understands that legacy is what we leave behind. We started messaging. His English was excellent, peppered with charming Italian phrases. Clara, he wrote. You are a lawyer? Fantastico. Finally, a woman who can read between the lines. My job is chaos. I need someone who brings order. He hooked me with intellect. We debated architecture. We talked about the difference between Roman and Gothic arches. He knew his stuff, or he was very good at Wikipedia. For 6 weeks, it was perfect. He sent me videos of the construction site. Look, Bella, he'd say, the camera panning over a dusty site with cranes moving in the distance. That is the East Wing. It will house 500 beds for sick children. The camera never turned around to show his face. He claimed it was a safety regulation on the site. No selfies in the hard hat zone. It sounded plausible. Safety protocols are strict. I respected that. But my lawyer brain noticed small things. He claimed to be in Istanbul, but he complained about the monsoon rain. Istanbul doesn't have monsoons in July. He said he was eating late dinner at 7 p.m., but Istanbul is 8 hours ahead of Chicago. It should have been 3 a.m. for him. I noted these discrepancies in a mental file. Exhibit A. The crisis arrived on a Monday morning. Clara, I am shaking, he texted. There has been an accident. My heart jumped. Are you hurt? No. But the project is bleeding. The Turkish government has frozen the assets of my main supplier due to a political investigation. They have seized my steel shipment at the port. 4 containers of surgical-grade steel. That's a force majeure event, I replied automatically. Check your contract. You should have an extension clause. I do, he said. But the Port Authority is corrupt. They don't care about the contract. They wanted demurrage fee to release the containers. If I don't pay by Friday, they auction the steel. And the hospital, the children, The project will die. He was good. He combined urgency, corruption, and the children. How much is the fee? I asked. $85,000. My corporate accounts are linked to the frozen supplier. I am locked out. Clara. I have never asked anyone for help. I am a proud man. But I cannot let this hospital fail. Can you bridge the gap? Just for 7 days? I will pay you 15% interest from the project completion bonus. I stared at the phone. $85,000. I had the money. It was sitting in my brokerage account. But I didn't get rich by writing checks to strangers. Marco, I said. I can't just wire money based on a text message. If this is a business transaction, I need to treat it like one. Send me the contract with the Port Authority. Send me the invoice for the demurrage fee. And send me your company's registration. Clara, there is no time for paperwork, he snapped. There is always time for paperwork, Marco, I typed back, my fingers hitting the keys hard. No contract, no cash. That's how I operate. He paused. He realized he couldn't bully me. Okay, he relented. I will send you the documents. But please, hurry. An hour later, an email arrived. Subject: urgent. Port release documents. Attached were 3 PDF files. I opened them on my 27-inch iMac. I poured myself a glass of water. I wasn't looking at them with love. I was looking at them with the eyes of a shark. I opened the first document, Port of Istanbul, Customs Release Order. It looked impressive. Stamps, signatures, a government seal. But I zoomed in. The seal was for the Ministry of Maritime Affairs. I opened Google. I searched for the Turkish government ministries. There is no Ministry of Maritime Affairs in Turkey. It's the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure. Strike 1. I looked at the font. The body text was Times New Roman. But the specific numbers, $85,000, were in Arial. He had edited an existing document and typed in the amount. Lazy. Then I looked at the lawyer, who had supposedly notarized it. Barrister John Smith, ESQ, barrister, is a British term. Turkey uses civil law, not common law. They don't have barristers. And John Smith. In Istanbul. Strike 2. I felt a cold rage building in my chest. He was insulting my intelligence. He thought because I was a woman of a certain age, I wouldn't notice that he was mixing up legal systems. Then, I looked at the payment instructions at the bottom. Bank name, SunTrust Bank, account name, Global Medical Supplies LLC, location, Miami, Florida. Miami. Why would a Turkish port authority accept payment to a commercial LLC in Miami? It made 0 sense. This Global Medical Supplies LLC was the mule. I looked it up on the Florida Division of Corporations website, Sunbiz. It existed. It was registered 3 months ago. Registered agent, a man named Pedro G. Principal address, a residential apartment in Little Havana. Marco wasn't a civil engineer. He was a fraudster. And Global Medical Supplies was a shell company set up to launder money. I could have blocked him right there. But I thought about the other women. The ones who weren't lawyers. The ones who would see the official stamps and panic. The ones who would mortgage their homes to save the children's hospital. I decided I wasn't going to block him. I was going to keep him busy. I was going to tie him up in so much legal red tape that he would wish he had never matched with me. Did you notice the font change? Or the wrong ministry name? These are the cracks in the facade. Scammers count on panic to blind you. But Clara didn't panic, she audited. If you love seeing a professional dismantle a lie, hit the like button. I picked up my phone. Marco, I texted. I received the documents. They look standard. But for an amount over $50,000, my bank requires a letter of intent, signed by your CFO. Also, I noticed a discrepancy in the jurisdiction clause. We need to fix that before I can wire the funds. I was going to become his worst nightmare, a client who wants to negotiate the contract. His reply was immediate and frustrated. Clara, just send the money. The children. No, I replied. I'm protecting your investment, Marco. Let's get on a video call. I need to review clause 4.2 with you. He couldn't refuse. If he refused, he lost the money. I prepared my webcam. I put on my blazer. Court was in session. I put on my navy blue blazer, the one I used to wear for closing arguments. I set up my iPad on a stand, ensuring the lighting was unflattering for me. I wanted to look like a tired, detail-oriented bureaucrat, a lawyer looking for a problem to solve. I texted Marco, I'm ready. 5 minutes. Have the blueprints handy. He accepted the video call. The screen flickered. A man appeared. He was wearing a hard hat and a safety vest, sitting in what looked like a site office. There was a map on the wall behind him. He looked like the photos. Handsome. Stubble. Intense eyes. But the video quality was terrible. It was grainy, and his mouth movement was slightly out of sync with the audio. Clara, amore, he smiled, flashing white teeth. Finally, I see you. You are beautiful, even with your glasses. Let's skip the flattery, Marco, I said, putting on my reading glasses. I'm looking at clause 4.2 of the customs release. It says the steel is grade 304. But for a pediatric hospital in a seismic zone like Istanbul, shouldn't you be using structural steel grade S355? Grade 304 is stainless steel for cutlery, not structural beams. I had spent 10 minutes on an engineering forum before the call. I knew just enough to be dangerous. Marco blinked. The delay was palpable. He looked down, pretending to check papers. Yes, Clara. It is for the interior. The surgical theaters. Not the beams. The beams are already up. Okay, I said, making a note on my legal pad. And what about the soil liquefaction report? The invoice mentions a geotechnical surcharge. Istanbul is on the North Anatolian Fault. If you haven't done the liquefaction mitigation, this steel shipment is useless. Did you use vibrocompaction or stone columns? He froze. He had no idea what I was talking about. He was a script reader in a call center, not an engineer. We used the stone, he stammered. The best stone. Very strong. Stone columns, I corrected him. Okay. And why does the invoice list the weight in pounds? Turkey uses the metric system. Why isn't it in kilograms? Because the supplier is American, he shouted, losing his cool. Clara, why are you doing this? The children need the hospital. Stop talking about stones and send the money. He was cracking. A real engineer loves technical questions. A scammer hates them because they expose the lie. I hit the stop recording button on my separate capture device. I had enough. I just need to be diligent, Marco, I said calmly. I'm drafting the wire instructions now. But I need to verify the beneficiary. I'm going to call Global Medical Supplies in Miami to confirm their routing number. His eyes went wide. No, he yelled. Do not call them. They are busy. They are just the clearinghouse. Talk to me. I always verify the vendor, Marco. It's standard procedure. Don't worry, I'll tell them you sent me. I hung up. Did you see him panic? Scammers operate on a script. When you ask a technical question that isn't on the script, like metric versus imperial, or soil liquefaction, they freeze. They can't improvise. If you ever suspect someone is faking their job, ask a boring, technical question. Their answer will tell you everything. I didn't wire the money. Instead, I turned my attention to Pedro G., the registered agent of Global Medical Supplies LLC, in Miami. I had found his phone number on the LLC registration filing. It was a cell phone. I didn't call him as an angry victim. I called him as a suspicious compliance officer. I dialed the number. Hola. A man answered. He sounded young, maybe in his 30s. Latin accent. Background noise of traffic. Is this Mr. Pedro Garcia? I asked, using my courtroom voice, firm, authoritative, flat. Yes. Who is this? Mr. Garcia, my name is Clara, last name. I am conducting a due diligence audit on a transaction involving your company, Global Medical Supplies LLC. We have a pending wire transfer of $85,000 reference to a Marco Moretti. Are you the authorized recipient? There was a silence. Marco? Pedro asked. Yes. Yes, Marco is my business partner. Is the money coming? That depends, I said. Mr. Garcia, what is the nature of your business with Mr. Moretti? Are you shipping steel to Turkey? Steel. Pedro sounded confused. No. We export medical equipment. Wheelchairs. Masks. Marco sends me the payments from his investors, and I buy the equipment to ship to Africa. And Turkey. He was stumbling. The story was changing. First it was steel, now it was wheelchairs. Mr. Garcia, I said, sharpening my tone. I am looking at your corporate filing. You operate out of an apartment in Little Havana. You don't have a warehouse. Where are you storing $85,000 worth of steel? I am a broker, he said defensively. I facilitate. You facilitate money laundering, I said. What? No. I am a legitimate businessman. Listen to me, Pedro. I dropped the act. I am a retired corporate attorney. I know Marco Moretti is not real. I know the documents he sent me are forged. And I know that if I wire $85,000 to your account, you're going to keep 10% and send the rest to a crypto wallet or a bank in Nigeria. Am I correct? He went silent. The breathing on the line got heavy. That makes you a co-conspirator in federal wire fraud, I continued. Do you know the penalty for that? Up to 20 years in prison. And they will deport you if you aren't a citizen. I didn't know. Pedro's voice cracked. He told me he was an engineer. He said he couldn't use his bank because of the war. He hired me as a logistics manager. He lied to you, Pedro. Just like he lied to me. He is using your bank account to wash dirty money. You are what we call a mule. I have never met him, Pedro admitted, his voice trembling. We only talk on WhatsApp. I thought it was a job. I lost my job at the hotel during the pandemic. I needed the money. I softened my tone slightly. This was the opening. Pedro, I haven't called the FBI yet. But I am documenting everything. If you want to stay out of prison, you need to help me. Help you how? I need you to forward me every email, every invoice, and every WhatsApp message Marco sent you. Especially the ones with payment instructions. I need to see where the money goes after it leaves your account. He will kill me, Pedro whispered. He said he has people in Miami. He doesn't have people in Miami, I said. He has people in an internet cafe in Lagos. But the FBI? They do have people in Miami. And they are much scarier. Make a choice, Pedro. Do you want to be a witness or a defendant? Pedro chose correctly. 10 minutes later, my inbox started dinging. Pedro forwarded me months of chat logs. I sat back, sipping my scotch, and read through the anatomy of a scam. It was worse than I thought. Marco wasn't just scamming women. He was scamming Pedro too. He had promised Pedro a salary of $5,000 a month plus commission. But looking at the logs, Pedro had only been paid $500. Marco, the big payment is coming next week, Pedro. Just process this $20,000 check from Susan first. I saw names. Susan. Deborah. Linda. Other women. Other victims. They had sent checks. They had wired money. Pedro had taken the money, converted it to Bitcoin at a local ATM, and sent it to a wallet address Marco provided. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just about me avoiding a loss. This was a crime scene. I had the evidence. I had the mule. But I needed to nail Marco. He was still texting me, asking about the wire. Clara, did you call Global Medical? Did you send the funds? I needed to stall him while I organized the evidence for the authorities. I decided to use the legal system against him. I opened my laptop and drafted a document. Contract of loan and repayment agreement. It was 10 pages long. Dense. Filled with Latin phrases. Mutatis mutandis. In personam. It required him to provide a copy of his passport, his driver's license, and a thumbprint. I replied to Marco. Marco, good news. Global Medical confirmed the account. I am ready to wire the $85,000. But as my late husband used to say, trust is good, binding arbitration is better. I have drafted a loan agreement. Sign it, scan it, and send it back with your ID. Once I have that, the money flies. He would hate it. But for $85,000? He would sign anything. And when he sent me his ID, I would run it through the facial recognition databases I still had access to from my investigator friends. Marco replied an hour later. I signed it. Here is the contract. And my passport. I opened the attachment. The passport was Italian. Marco Moretti. The photo matched the handsome man in the video. But when I looked at the passport number, I noticed something strange about the font spacing. And when I ran the photo through a reverse search, it didn't come back as a model. It came back as a real person. A real architect living in Milan named Luca. And Luca had been dead for 2 years. Marco was wearing a dead man's face. I stared at the passport photo on my screen. Luca Rossi. He wasn't Marco Moretti. He was a brilliant Milanese architect who had died of pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. I found his obituary in Corriere della Sera. I found the tribute page his firm had set up. The scammer was wearing a dead man's face. He was using Luca's portfolio, Luca's smile, and Luca's reputation to rob women. It was a violation that made my blood boil colder than any stolen money could. It was grave robbing. I found the contact email for Luca's architecture firm in Milan. It was run by his sister now. I composed a message. Subject: unauthorized use of Luca Rossi's identity. Dear Madam, I am a retired attorney in Chicago. I regret to inform you that your late brother's identity is being used by an international criminal syndicate to defraud women in the United States. They have forged passports and created fake profiles using his likeness. I am currently building a case against them. I wanted you to know, so you can report the profiles to Instagram/Facebook for removal to protect his legacy. I sent it. It was a courtesy. A professional courtesy. Then, I turned back to Marco. He was messaging me again. Clara, did you get the passport? Is the money moving? The Port Authority is threatening to auction the steel tomorrow. He was relentless. He had no idea I knew he was impersonating a ghost. I decided to use this against him. Marco, I replied. I have the passport. But my bank's compliance officer noticed something. The passport number doesn't match the font of the issuing authority in Rome. He thinks it might be an expired scan. He needs a secondary verification. What? It is valid. I travel with it. I know, Marco. Bureaucracy is terrible. But look, I have a solution. Since we can't verify you in Turkey, we have to verify the recipient in Miami. The Patriot Act requires a physical site inspection for any domestic wire over $50,000 to a commercial LLC. I was inventing laws again. But to a criminal, the Patriot Act is a terrifying black box of American power. Site inspection. Marco asked. What does that mean? It means the bank sends a risk officer to the address of Global Medical Supplies in Miami, just to take a picture of the warehouse and confirm the business exists. Once he sees the sign on the door, he releases the $85,000 instantly. It happens tomorrow at 9 a.m. Did you see the trap? He knows the Miami address isn't a warehouse. It's Pedro's apartment. If a bank officer shows up, the game is over. He has to choose, admit the address is fake and lose the money, or try to fake a warehouse overnight. Scammers panic when the virtual world meets the real world. If you love seeing him sweat, hit the like button. Marco panicked. No, Clara. You cannot send anyone there. Pedro. Mr. Garcia. He is very private. He runs a secure facility. No visitors. It's not a visitor, Marco. It's a bank auditor. If he refuses entry, the account gets frozen for suspicious activity. Do you want the money or not? I had him checkmated. If he said no, he lost the $85,000. If he said yes, he risked exposing his mule. He went silent for 20 minutes. He was likely calling Pedro in Miami, screaming at him to make his apartment look like a legitimate medical supply business. Finally, Marco replied, Okay, fine. Send the inspector. But tell him to be quick. Mr. Garcia is a busy man. I smiled. I wasn't sending a bank inspector. I picked up my phone and called Pedro in Miami. Pedro, I said. This is Clara. Marco just called you, didn't he? Yes. Pedro sounded terrified. He is screaming. He says a bankman is coming. He told me to put boxes in the living room and print a sign that says, Global Medical Supplies. He said if I mess this up, he will ruin me. Listen to me, Pedro. The man coming tomorrow isn't from the bank. He's a private investigator I hired. A former FBI agent. Oh Dios mío, Pedro whispered. Relax, Pedro. This is your way out. When he knocks, you invite him in. You show him the apartment. You show him the fake sign. And then, you hand him your laptop. The one you use to process the crypto. My laptop. Yes. You give him the evidence. He will take it into custody. It proves you are cooperating. If you do this, I will tell the district attorney that you were a whistleblower, not a co-conspirator. Pedro hesitated. Will he arrest me? Not tomorrow. He's just gathering evidence. But if you hide anything, Pedro, I can't protect you. Okay, Pedro said, his voice shaking. I will do it. I want this to end. The next morning at 9 a.m., my contact in Miami, a PI named Alvarez, knocked on Pedro's door in Little Havana. I was on the phone with Alvarez via AirPods, listening in. Mr. Garcia? Alvarez asked. Yes. Pedro's voice was trembling. Come in. This is Global Medical Supplies. I could hear the shuffling of feet. Nice apartment, Alvarez said dryly. Where is the inventory? Where are the wheelchairs? I don't have them, Pedro broke script. Look. Here is the laptop. Here are the files. Clara told me to give them to you. Smart move, kid, Alvarez said. Marco thinks you are the bank, Pedro said. He wants me to take a picture of you signing a paper. Let's take the picture, Alvarez said. We want him to think everything is fine. They staged the photo. Alvarez, looking official in a suit, signing a clipboard in Pedro's living room next to a printed sign taped to the wall. Pedro sent the photo to Marco. 10 minutes later, Marco messaged me. See, Clara? The inspector was there. He signed it. Now, wire the money. The children are waiting. He thought he had survived the test. He thought he had fooled the bank. He didn't know that Alvarez was currently walking out of the apartment with a cloned copy of Pedro's hard drive, containing the wallet addresses, the chat logs with the Nigerian handlers, and the list of other victims. I replied to Marco. Fantastic news, Marco. The risk officer just uploaded his report. He says the facility looks cozy. I'm initiating the wire now. It should clear by end of day. I wasn't initiating anything. I was initiating a report to the FBI's Miami field office, attaching the hard drive data Alvarez had just secured. I poured myself another coffee. I felt a grim satisfaction. I had turned his own infrastructure against him. Pedro made the right choice. He realized that loyalty to a scammer gets you nothing but a prison sentence. By flipping on his boss, he saved himself. This is the house of cards collapsing. One loose thread, Pedro, unraveled the whole sweater. If you are cheering for this takedown, comment, checkmate, below. I sat waiting for the inevitable explosion when the money didn't arrive. But then, my phone rang. It wasn't Marco. It was a number from Italy. I answered. Hello. Is this Clara, last name? A woman's voice asked. She spoke English with a heavy Italian accent. This is Giulia Rossi, Luca's sister. You sent me an email. Yes, Giulia. I'm so sorry to disturb you. No, Clara. You don't understand. We have been trying to find this man for a year. He didn't just steal Luca's photos. He stole something else. Something from our server. And we think we know where he is. I held the phone tight to my ear, listening to Giulia Rossi's voice tremble with a mix of grief and rage from Milan. It wasn't just photos, Clara, Giulia explained. When Luca died, we kept his server active to archive his projects. 3 months ago, we had a breach. Someone bypassed our firewall. They didn't take client financial data. They took the raw CAD files. The blueprints. Why steal blueprints? I asked, my legal brain spinning. To pretend to be an architect. Yes. But they took specific files. The pediatric hospital plans Marco sent you? Those are real. But they are not for a hospital in Istanbul. They are the security schematics for a new consulate building we designed for a European government in Ankara. It is classified infrastructure. My blood ran cold. Marco wasn't just using fake pictures of a building. He was sending classified security layouts of a diplomatic compound to random women in America as proof of work. If those files leaked onto the open internet, it was a national security risk for that government. Giulia, I said. This is espionage. Or at least, gross negligence with classified data. I know, she said. But we traced the exfiltration. Our IT team found the IP address where the files were downloaded. It wasn't a VPN in Nigeria. It was a static commercial IP in Istanbul, Turkey. In the Levant financial district. So he is in Turkey, I whispered. Yes. He is real. Or at least, the operation is real. They are sitting in a high-rise office in Istanbul, posing as a legitimate engineering firm to launder money and steal data. They are hiding in plain sight. This changed everything. This wasn't a guy in an internet cafe. This was organized crime operating out of a business district. Send me the IP logs, Giulia, I said. I'm going to add them to the FBI file. We aren't just looking at wire fraud anymore. We're looking at international cyber theft. I hung up with Giulia and turned back to my computer. Marco was messaging me again. The tone had shifted. The romantic amore was gone. Clara. It is 5 p.m. The wire has not hit the account. I checked with the bank. There is no pending transaction. He was checking the account balances in real time. He was impatient. I decided to stall him one last time. Marco, banks are slow. The risk officer submitted his report. It takes 24 hours to clear. Relax. Pedro was very helpful. I waited for his reply. I expected him to beg, or to scream about the children. Instead, he sent a photo. My heart stopped. It was a grainy, black and white photo. It showed the living room of an apartment. In the center of the room stood Pedro. And standing next to him was Alvarez, my private investigator. Alvarez was handing Pedro a business card. Under the photo, Marco typed, "Who is the man in the suit, Clara? He is not a banker. Bankers don't carry guns." I squinted at the photo. Alvarez had a concealed carry permit, and the print of his holster was slightly visible under his jacket. Marco, or whoever was watching, had spotted it. How? How did he have a photo of inside Pedro's apartment? I grabbed my phone and called Pedro immediately. "Pedro, do you have a camera in your apartment? A webcam? A baby monitor?" "No. I live alone," Pedro shouted, panic in his voice. "Wait. The inventory system." "What inventory system?" "Marco sent me a laptop and a scanner for the inventory. He told me to keep it plugged in and pointed at the living room so he could audit the stock remotely. It sits on top of the TV." "Unplug it," I screamed. "It's not a scanner, you idiot. It's a camera. He's watching you right now." I heard a crash on the other end of the line as Pedro presumably ripped the device off the wall. "He saw Alvarez," I told Pedro. "He knows it was a setup. Get out of the apartment. Go to your sister's house. Do not go back there tonight." "Is he coming for me?" Pedro whimpered. "He's in Istanbul, Pedro. But he knows you betrayed him. Run." I hung up. My phone buzzed again. "Marco. You are smart, Clara. You sent a cop. You raided my mule. You think you are safe in Chicago." He sent another file. Clara underscomed JPG. I opened it, my hand shaking slightly. It wasn't a photo of inside my house. It was a Google Street View image of my apartment building on Lake Shore Drive. But overlaid on it was my full name, my date of birth, and my social security number. "I have your LexisNexis report," Marco wrote. "I know where you live. I know you live alone. You cost me $85,000 today. You cost me my mule. Do you know what I do to people who steal from me?" This is the moment the mask falls completely. He isn't a lover. He's a predator who uses surveillance technology. He was watching Pedro the whole time. But notice his threat. He sends a Google Street View picture. That means he isn't here. He is trying to scare her from a distance. Clara knows the difference between a real threat and a digital bully. If you respect her courage, hit the like button. Fear is a chemical reaction. It flooded my system for about 30 seconds. He had my SSN. He knew my address. He had watched my investigator through a hidden camera. But then, the lawyer kicked in. He had just committed extortion and interstate stalking across international lines. And he had sent the evidence of his surveillance, the photo of Alvarez, directly to my phone. I didn't reply to him. I didn't beg for mercy. I forwarded the chat log, the photo of Alvarez, and the stolen blueprints Julia sent me directly to the FBI field office in Chicago. I still had the direct email of the assistant special agent in charge, ASAC, from a case I worked on 5 years ago. Subject: urgent, active extortion/corporate espionage case. Body: Agent Miller, see attached. Subject is operating from Istanbul, impersonating a dead Italian citizen, laundering money through Miami, stealing classified schematics from Milan, and is currently blackmailing a US citizen, me. He just sent proof of illegal surveillance of a Florida resident. The IP address is static in Levent, Istanbul. Then, I replied to Marco. "Marco, you just sent me a photo taken via an illegal surveillance device. That is a federal felony under the Video Voyeurism Prevention Act. And you threatened a former officer of the court. I don't care about your laws," he typed back. "I am untouchable in Turkey." "Nobody is untouchable," I replied. "And by the way, I spoke to Julia Rossi today. She says hello. She wants her brother's blueprints back." The Turkish police are very interested in why a foreign company is holding classified security plans for a consulate in Ankara. There was a long pause. I had dropped the nuclear option. If he was a scammer, he didn't care about US lawsuits. But if he was operating a business in Turkey, holding stolen plans for a Turkish diplomatic project, that made him an enemy of the Turkish state. You talked to Julia? He asked. The arrogance faltered. Yes. And she just filed a report with the Turkish Cyber Crimes Division. They are looking for a static IP in the Levent district. You might want to start shredding, Marco. I was bluffing about the Turkish police. Julia hadn't filed it yet. But he didn't know that. You witch, he wrote. You will regret this. Then, his status went to offline. I sat back in my chair. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me exhausted. I had poked the bear. I poured myself another scotch. I needed to secure my identity. I needed to freeze my credit. But mostly, I needed to know if he was really gone. I spent the night monitoring my accounts. Nothing moved. The next morning, I received a call from Agent Miller at the FBI. Clara, he said. We got the packet. This is big. The IP address you sent? It doesn't map to a residential internet line. Where does it map to? It maps to a luxury office suite in Istanbul that claims to be a call center for tech support. We've been watching them for months for a different fraud case. But you just gave us the probable cause for a raid. We're contacting the Turkish National Police. I felt a wave of relief. But then Miller added, there's one thing, Clara. The mule, in Miami. Pedro. He's missing. He didn't go to his sister's house. We can't find him. Missing. I repeated into the phone, clutching the edge of my desk. How can he be missing, Agent Miller? Alvarez left him at his apartment yesterday. His sister hasn't seen him, Miller said. And his phone is pinging off cell towers near the port of Miami. That's not a residential area, Clara. That's industrial. My stomach dropped. The port of Miami. Marco had told Pedro he was shipping medical supplies. Had Pedro gone there to try and find the non-existent shipment? Or worse, had Marco sent someone to silence him? I need to call him, I said. He's not answering, Miller replied. We have a bolo, be on the lookout, out for his car. He won't answer an unknown number, I said, thinking fast. But he might answer me. I'm the one who warned him. I hung up and dialed Pedro immediately. It went to voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. I sent a text. Pedro. This is Clara. I know you are scared. I know you are trying to fix this. But if you go to the port, you are walking into a trap. Marco is not there. The police are on your side. Answer me. 3 agonizing minutes passed. Then, my phone buzzed. A call from Pedro. Clara. He was whispering. I heard wind and the distant beep of heavy machinery in the background. Pedro, where are you? I am at the warehouse, he whispered. The one on the invoice Marco sent me last month. He told me if I bring the laptop back to the manager here, he won't hurt me. He said I can trade the laptop for my safety. Pedro, listen to me, I said, my voice sharp and commanding. There is no manager. Marco is in Turkey. He is trying to lure you to a quiet place to get you arrested, or worse. He wants you to be found with the laptop so you look like the criminal. But I see a car, Pedro said, his voice trembling. A black SUV. It is waiting. Get out of there, I ordered. Get back in your car and drive to the nearest police station. Do not approach that SUV. That is not Marco. That might be a local gang he hired to recover his hardware. Run, Pedro. I can't. Pedro, I am a lawyer. I am telling you, if you walk toward that car, I cannot save you. If you drive away, I will represent you pro bono. I will make sure you don't go to jail. Trust me. There was a silence. Then I heard a car door slam. An engine revving. I'm leaving, Pedro breathed. I'm leaving now. Good. Go to the station. Tell them Agent Miller sent you. I exhaled. I hadn't realized I was holding my breath. I had just talked a terrified man off a ledge. The scammer wasn't just stealing money. He was playing games with people's lives to cover his tracks. This is the danger of the mule trap. The scammer convinces the victim that they are the criminal, forcing them to do desperate things to hide the evidence. Pedro almost walked into a dangerous situation because of fear. Clara's legal authority saved him. If you are glad Pedro is safe, hit the like button. 2 hours later, the second shoe dropped. My computer dinged with an email from Giulia Rossi in Milan. Subject: Turn on the news. I opened a tab for TRT World, Turkish news. There was a breaking news banner. Police raid a legal call center in Istanbul Financial District. I clicked the live stream. The camera showed a sleek glass office building in Levent. Police vans blocked the street. Officers in tactical gear were escorting dozens of people out of the building with their hands zip-tied behind their backs. They weren't hauling out servers this time. They were hauling out people. Young men in t-shirts. Managers in suits. The reporter spoke in Turkish, but the voiceover translated. Turkish Cyber Crimes Division has dismantled a massive international fraud ring operating under the guise of an engineering consultancy. The group is accused of stealing millions from victims in the US and Europe, as well as holding classified documents stolen from an Italian architecture firm. The camera zoomed in on a man being led into a police van. He was wearing a sharp suit. He looked angry, shouting at the cameras. It wasn't the young man I saw on the video call. It was the boss. The man who likely orchestrated the theft of Luca's blueprints. Then, they showed the evidence tables. Rows of laptops. Stacks of fake passports. And on one of the screens captured by the news camera, I saw a familiar interface. It was a chat window. The name at the top was Clara, Chicago lawyer. They had found my file. I wasn't just a viewer. I was in the room with them. Agent Miller called me 10 minutes later. Did you see it? I'm watching it now, I said, sipping my tea. It looks efficient. It's a clean sweep, Miller said. The Turkish police found the server holding the stolen blueprints. Giulia Rossi is getting her brother's work back. And they found the crypto keys. They seized about $12 million in assets. What about Marco? I asked. The guy on the video call? We think he's one of the floor managers. We'll know more when they process the prisoners. But Clara, the threats? The surveillance photos? That's over. Their entire infrastructure is in an evidence bag. I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't happiness. It was relief, mixed with a deep, quiet pride. I had spent weeks feeling violated, feeling like a fool for swiping right on a handsome face. But I hadn't been a fool. I had been a Trojan horse. I let them into my life just long enough to map their layout, and then I burned their fortress down. Thank you, Miller, I said, for taking me seriously. You built the case, counselor, Miller said. We just served the warrant. I turned off the news. The silence returned to my apartment. Pedro was safe in police custody, likely cutting a deal. The scammers were in a Turkish jail. Giulia had her brother's legacy back. I walked over to the window looking out at Lake Michigan. I thought about the children's hospital. The lie that started it all. Marco had preyed on my grief for my grandchild. He had used the idea of sick children to bypass my skepticism. It was the cruelest part of the scam. I went to my desk. I opened my checkbook. I looked at the balance in my account. The $85,000 I had almost sent to a fake shipping agent in Miami. It was still there. Safe. But it felt heavy. It felt like money that had been targeted by evil. I didn't want it sitting there, reminding me of the pediatric oncology center that never existed. I picked up my pen. I wrote a check. Pay to the order of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Amount, $85,000. If Marco wanted to build a legacy for sick children, I would make sure it happened. But on my terms. With real doctors. In the real world. I put the check in an envelope. I walked down to the lobby and dropped it in the mail chute. As I watched it disappear, I felt the final weight lift. I hadn't just saved my money. I had repurposed it. I had turned a lie into a truth. I thought the story ended there. The check was mailed. The bad guys were gone. But 3 days later, a package arrived at my door. It had no return address. It was heavy. I hesitated. Was this a final threat from a remnant of the gang? I called building security to scan it. They said it was safe. Just books. I opened it. Inside was a large, hardcover portfolio. On the cover, embossed in silver, the works of Luca Rossi, architetto. And a note. To Clara. You saved his name. Please accept his work. Julia. I opened the book. And on the very last page, I saw something that made me gasp. A design sketch for a hospital. A real one. Luca had designed a hospital before he died. And Marco had stolen that dream too. I ran my fingers over the sketch on the last page of the book. It was dated 3 months before Luca Rossi died. It wasn't a sleek glass tower. It was a low-rise, sun-filled structure with gardens on the roof. Centro Pediatrico di Luz, Pediatric Center of Light. Marco hadn't just invented a hospital story to pull at my heartstrings. He had stolen Luca's final unfinished dream, the project he was working on from his chemotherapy bed, and turned it into a weapon to steal cash. It was the ultimate desecration. But looking at the sketch, I realized something. The scammer failed. He didn't build the hospital. He didn't get the money. But because of his lie, $85,000 was now sitting in the account of a real children's hospital in Memphis, St. Jude's. And because of his lie, Luca's sister Julia had regained control of his archives. I closed the book. I placed it on my coffee table, right next to the brass compass my husband gave me. I poured a glass of wine. To Luca, I whispered to the empty room. Case closed. That is the irony of evil. In trying to exploit a good man's legacy, the scammer inadvertently saved it. Clara ensured that Luca's name is now associated with justice, not fraud. If you believe that the truth always finds a way to surface, hit the like button. 4 months later. Okay, let's look at Exhibit C, ladies. I wasn't in a courtroom. I was in the community center of my local library. 6 women sat around a table. They weren't clients paying $800 an hour. They were women who had lost everything. Houses, pensions, dignity, to men they met online. This document, I pointed to a projection on the wall, claims to be a royal decree from the King of Jordan. But look at the signature. It's stamped, not signed. And the legal code cited? It's from the Napoleonic Code, not Jordanian law. The women scribbled notes. They were learning. I had started a new practice. The Clara Project. It wasn't a law firm. It was a legal clinic for victims of romance fraud. I helped them file IC3 reports, I helped them negotiate with their banks to recover funds, and I helped them understand that they weren't stupid, they were just outmatched by a professional syndicate. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Pedro. Pedro. Clara. I got the job. Logistics manager at a real warehouse. And the judge agreed to expunge the record in 1 year if I stay clean. Thank you. I smiled. Pedro was the only mule I had ever successfully flipped and saved. He testified against the Miami cell of the network, which led to 3 more arrests. He was rebuilding his life. I typed back. Proud of you, Pedro. Read the fine print on your employment contract. I packed up my briefcase. It was the same leather bag I used for 40 years, but it felt lighter now. I walked out of the library into the windy Chicago afternoon. I wasn't looking for a civil engineer anymore. I wasn't looking for a partner to fill the silence. The silence was gone. My life was loud again. Loud with the stories of women fighting back. I hailed a cab. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked. "Federal Plaza," I said. "I have a meeting with the U.S. attorney. We have a new case. They use contracts to lie. I use the law to burn them down. The court is always in session. Real life is full of fine print. But Clara proved that if you read between the lines, you can find the truth, and the weapon you need to fight back. Because you watched until here, I know you want to be as sharp as Clara. So you need to do 3 things. First, leave a powerful like. The YouTube algorithm needs to know that we value intelligence over intimidation. Help this message reach the women who need it most. Second, subscribe and hit the bell. You guarantee a new story every week right in your feed. Here we bring the raw truth about relationships, money, and the law. Third, go down to the comments and tell us, have you ever spotted a fake document? A typo in a legal letter? Share your sharp-eyed moments below. Remember, 87% of people watch and forget to subscribe. Don't be that person. Knowledge is your best defense. Click subscribe now. Court adjourned.